What's up, heathens? How you doing today? I'm doing pretty good. Today we have the Genetically Modified Skeptic that is going to be on the show. We are interviewing him to find out a little bit more about him. If you guys watched the Max Kolbe thing, that particular video that it was pulled from was actually going over Genetically Modified Skeptic's video about being arrogant and being an atheist. So if you will, please join me to find out a little bit more about Genetically Modified Skeptic, and I will see you heathens later. This is the Genetically Modified Skeptic. He's recently been featured on Himameta's blog, The Friendly Atheist, that's what brought my attention to him. But you guys know that I love interviewing people and seeing how religion played a part in their lives. So that's what we're doing here today. So welcome. I really appreciate you joining me today.
Oh, sorry. I have a dog that just totally jumped all over my tripod. So, all right. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. So why don't you start, telling us a little bit about your channel and what you do there and everything.
Well, my name is Drew. I just kind of go by my first name on my channel. I don't know. I just never really saw a need necessarily to put my full name out there, although I'm okay with it. Like Hemant has posted about my videos twice and called me Drew McCoy in each, and that's fine. But I make videos about atheism and kind of pseudoscience, skepticism. I originally started out wanting to make almost exclusively videos about kind of alternative medicine and kind of debunking and criticizing. I kind of wanted to look at a lot of propaganda from the alternative medicine world and just kind of debunk it and make fun of it, almost Bible Reloaded style. And then I realized that would have been a lot funnier if I had a co-host. And so I decided to take it a little bit more seriously. I saw that people like to talk about atheism on my videos a lot, and so I decided to ramp up the atheist content just a little bit, and that's gone pretty well so far. But yeah, my whole channel is just about trying to get people on the atheist side to question alternative medicine and people in the alternative medicine world to question religion.
Okay, awesome. That sounds like a really good niche group to really focus on there.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Which, I mean, you've got the attention of Himameta and all them. So, you're on the way up.
Hopefully so. I was just it was weird. I was just at work one day and he emailed me and was talking about sharing one of my videos and trying to see if he could have my full name, if that was okay, like to post it in the article. And I about shit my pants. So that was pretty cool. I'd only been around for about 2 months or so, and that happened. So it's pretty cool. It's one of my goals achieved pretty quickly. So
nice. Yeah. So why don't we start out by talking about how religion played a part in your early life? Like, what was that like as a child and whatnot?
Yeah, I was raised independent fundamental Baptist. Basically, I went to church 3 times a week, sometimes more. Would go volunteer at the church all the time. I mean, my family's entire life revolved around church and being very fundamental, interpreting everything from the Bible literally, except for, like stone people type of stuff. So I was very, very religious. I didn't even start questioning until the end of my time at my very Christian conservative school. And so it's weird that I'm living the life that I'm living now, because I never would have thought that I would have gone away from the fold, because I was so much for creationism. I was so even politically conservative as a 12-year-old, all that kind of stuff. I bought it wholeheartedly, was kind of the ideal Christian kid in a way. And that's pretty much how I remained until I started questioning. So. Okay.
Did you participate in vacation Bible schools, and did you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I participated in vacation Bible school every single year that I can remember. And then as soon as I was old enough, I was a worker at every single vacation Bible school that my church put on until I guess I moved away for college. And then I also went to a lot of Christian summer camps. I actually just put out a video about why I'm working at Camp Quest, and a lot of that was my experience at Christian summer camps were full of indoctrination. So I was also kind of a leader in my youth group, and so I was extremely involved. That was my whole life, basically.
Okay. Would you be able to recall like any kind of situations during those camps that you felt were particularly like religiously indoctrinated, or any aspects, I guess, maybe not specific instances?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the funny things that I can remember is I wish I could remember the rest of the song, but there was a vacation Bible school that I was working when I was like in high school, and I was like basically a hype man. I just sat with the kids and did all the screaming and stuff, trying to get them all hyped up during these sermons. And they had like a puppet show at one point where they were talking about evolution and why it's like a bunch of lies. And they had this song that was about, it was like, my great grandma's not a monkey. My great grandpa's no ape, something like that. And I remember sitting and thinking, this is the funniest thing that I've ever seen. And it's just so true. Like, I resonate with this so much. And I want to make sure that all these little kids understand like the deep meaning behind this just silly little song. And there's a lot of stuff that I think I saw as very innocent then, that now looking back on it, I realize it was kind of a wolf in sheep's clothing type of deal. It's right. Scary stuff in my mind now.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I remember going to like vacation Bible school and whatnot, but I never I've never recalled like anything specific other than like just me having fun with friends. But then again, like religion wasn't that big of a deal for me even when I was younger. So, but that's kind of interesting to hear, you know, all these different experiences with like vacation Bible school and whatnot. So is there is there anything like in your early life like that kind of stuck out to you as far as like how your parents were or how your friends were or anything like that? Like, just like now that you look back on it, is it like, wow, that was not cool or something like that?
Yeah. This is almost like a funny story that I tell some people about my upbringing, whether they're Christian or not, because they think it's crazy either way. But I was the only person in my church, only kid in my youth group that was like allowed to listen to music. And I'm not talking about like secular music. I mean, music. Like, there was no doctrine in our church that said you couldn't listen to music or something. But a lot of the time the kids in the youth group were only allowed to maybe like listen to a soundtrack from a movie if their parents were around, or like if there was a Southern gospel singer that came to the church. That happened all the time. They would like pick up a CD and like they'd be able to maybe listen to that. But I like listened to punk rock and stuff, and my parents didn't really like it, but they were kind of like, he has access to the internet, so he's going to listen to what he's going to listen to. Let's just like try to be a good influence. But I mean, everybody in my church besides me, it seemed like, wasn't even allowed to listen to like gospel CDs unless their parents were around, type of thing. So really, really scary stuff. And yeah, a lot of Christians that I've talked to, my friends that are Christians now, think that that's absolutely ridiculous even. Yeah.
That seems rather weird. Are you familiar with Steven Anderson?
The name sounds familiar, but I don't think so.
Well, he's a pastor in Tempe, Arizona, and I mean, he's like severe fundamentalist Baptist kind of person.
Oh, he's that guy that jumped up on the pulpit thing, was like screaming, "Get out of here if you say LGBT community" or something, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. He actually recently cut out a section of a sermon from like 2014 where he was talking about how women in marriages can't be raped. And so, like, I'm kind of curious that, how would, your fundamentalist upbringing kind of mirror like that kind of sentiment? Like, is it somewhere between that and like the newer age, I guess, kind of Christians, or is it like Steven Anderson's kind of, Christianity?
I would say that the beliefs were probably exactly the same, as his, but the delivery was a little different. Like maybe if he like took a Xanax or something, that would have been my pastor. So yeah, I mean, we had guest speakers that came to the church every, couple of months or something, like evangelists that would be fire and brimstone. And I mean, they wouldn't like yell the word fag or anything like that, but they would teach the same kind of message, just maybe with some of the less, like some of the slurs taken out, basically. So yeah, beliefs pretty much exactly the same, just not delivered in a like hateful way, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to get a sense of exactly how like far fundamentalist it was. But now let's get on to like why you started questioning. What was like? Was there any kind of pivotal moment that started making you question, or was it like a long drawn out process that made you start questioning? What was that like?
I guess it kind of happened in steps. It was like one domino falling over and toppling over the rest, kind of like that. But the first dominoes fell really, really slowly, and then suddenly a lot fell really quickly. So basically, I would say the first thing that really made me start questioning was I took an astronomy class at my Christian school, and my professor was he was a particle physicist, and he actually had like some decent research behind him and everything. And one of his hobbies was astronomy. So basically all that to say, he was a legitimate scientist, and so he wasn't actually going to teach us something that was just total bullshit, like there's a young Earth or something. So I think it was in like sophomore year of college, and I took that astronomy class, and I went in as a young Earth creationist, and I came out as an old Earth creationist. So, I mean, we didn't address like if evolution was possible or something, because that's not really relevant. We just did astronomy, and I realized, studying like redshifting, studying the fact that it takes tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years for a photon to actually be released from the fusion process of the sun and make it to Earth. So therefore, there's no way that we'd even be able to see the light of the sun if we were only, a 6,000-year-old planet. So that was kind of my first domino to fall. And then later in school, I was still totally fundamentalist. Like I've said this in one of my videos, I was a fundamentalist in every other way. And I just was like, I'm not going to think about it because I don't want to. I think I knew that I can't, or I couldn't. And so I finally, in my senior year, I took a graduate class kind of as a dual credit type thing in human sexuality. And I realized, people are totally born gay. They're born LGBT, and nothing that has ever been tried statistically can be shown to work at all. You can't change them. They're born that way, and they're going to stay that way. And I had a little bit of a crisis, like a secret crisis, thinking, oh man, well, the science says that God created everybody that's gay. He created them gay, and they're not ever going to be able to change, and yet they are condemned for that. And that didn't make any sense to me. So I tried to push it out of my head as much as possible, and it didn't really work because, and this is something that I've mentioned in one of my videos before, I, at that time, was really in a dialogue with one of my relatives about alternative medicine. I'd come to the conclusion that alternative medicine was total bullshit, and that medicine, if there's no such thing as alternative medicine. If it's medicine, it's proven, if it's proven, it's medicine. There's no alternative to that, and no alternative facts, I guess I'll say. So I was arguing with them, and they said, kind of stop attacking me. This is what I believe. It's important to me. And it made me realize that's exactly what I'm doing with Christianity. I have these things that don't really make sense with my beliefs, but I'm allowing the cognitive dissonance. And after that, I realized I have to dig into this because these thoughts are just nagging me. Like they just keep coming. I'm never going to get away from them until I address them. So I thought, if Christianity is really true, sorry, my dog's barking now. If Christianity is really true, then everything that I find is going to show me that it is. Maybe it's a different kind of Christianity than I was brought up with, but I'll find the truth. And so I went in with a little bit of confidence, but I tried to be as objective as possible. at that time I was watching a lot of like SciShow and It's Okay to Be Smart and Crash Course. And I realized, you know, there's nothing out there that is really supporting Christianity in at least this literal view. And I'll say even my fundamentalist indoctrination probably pushed me away from interpreting anything as a metaphor. Like I was like, Genesis just isn't a metaphor. If it's a metaphor, there was no original sin, and the story of the death and resurrection, that makes no sense. Like he's dying for nothing because he just created them that way, and it just all started falling all at once. And I decided to go on just a total media blackout for about 4 months when all the dominoes started to fall, and I thought, I need to figure this out from a philosophical point of view. I don't want to watch any like atheist videos. I don't want to watch any Christian videos. I want them to be my own arguments. So I decided to even push off my ideas, or I'll say my knowledge of evolution and my knowledge of people being born LGBT. And I ended up coming to, you know, if God created me with the mind that I have that is skeptical and is questioning, and he can't present evidence that is, or almost make a self-evident type argument, like an ontological type argument that would convince me that the universe operates with, like, just with him, not necessarily without him, then he would. And it's not my fault that I'm questioning this way if I'm not the one who's ultimately in control of my mind. So I finally came to kind of the problem of evil, and I realized it was like, you know, he's all powerful and all powerful and kind of all good. And then whence cometh evil? If he can be all knowing or all powerful. I'm sorry, and all good. No, I'm totally messing that up. But anyway, yeah, I'm just blanking on that. But anyway, I think you catch my drift. I was realizing that it's not my fault that I'm questioning. And I finally came out of the media blackout thinking, you know, it seems that the universe can operate entirely without any kind of supernatural explanation. All the research that I've done has shown that. All of the kind of arguments just in my head don't really work out to prove anything beyond just what I can observe and what is what's natural. I could never observe something supernatural, and therefore why could I ever believe in that? And I finally, one day, just after about 4 months of that blackout, I was like, I don't really know what the word for what I am. Maybe it's atheist. And so I think I looked up the definition of like atheist to see if I was, and I was. And so I was like, oh wow, I'm really in the shit now. I have no idea what to do. And eventually I found some atheist videos that kind of comforted me and made me realize other people that are really smart have had these same thoughts. And so eventually I got into atheist YouTube pretty hard, and that's kind of why I'm doing this now.
All right. Well, I'm kind of curious, what, like during that time when you were kind of questioning things, and even, I guess maybe even after that astronomy class where you changed from young Earth to old Earth, like, did you tell anybody about this, or did you kind of keep it to yourself?
I think the only person that I cared to talk to about it with was my then girlfriend, now wife. We took the class together, and we were both convinced by the same evidence. We talked about it after class, like every day. Like, this doesn't really make sense with the Bible exactly. Maybe everything was created with age. Maybe it was this way. It was this way. Neither one of us really settled on anything. But we both knew that the other one wasn't a young Earth creationist anymore. She was before the class as well, and wasn't afterward. And so we talked about it there. There were some people in my school that weren't necessarily young Earth creationists. Someone moved across the hall from me like a semester later and became like my best friend. And he'd always been like an old Earth creationist, basically. And so I talked to him about it, but it wasn't something that I found. I didn't want to talk about it, so I never thought to bring it up with anyone. And so I guess no one really knew besides my girlfriend and fiance, then wife, until I started coming out as an atheist to anybody, which is still not a lot of people now.
Okay. So have you, I'm presuming that your parents know?
Yeah. I hid the whole thing from my parents for probably, it was about a year. I started really realizing, I'm probably an atheist at the very beginning of 2016. And I came out to them just this last January, 2017. I'm pretty sure it was like the end of January. And it wasn't even like it was on my terms. Like, I definitely wanted to go and come out to them. I was just like, I'm going to make it not come up as long as I possibly can. And eventually it got to the point where my parents were like, you don't go to church anymore. You don't do this. You don't do that. You like act weird when we pray at, holidays, when you come over for dinner and all this kind of stuff. You never volunteer to pray anymore. And so they just were like, I really want to have a sit down conversation with you and figure out what's going on. And I was like, I'm just going to have to tell them and we'll see what happens. The reason I didn't want to come out was because it wasn't really for my sake, because I knew my parents wouldn't like scream at me or shun me or anything, because that's not how they are. And they're probably the only people in the church that wouldn't do that to their child. So I guess there's a correlation between letting your kids listen to music and actually, like loving them regardless of whether or not they believe in your deity. But I didn't want to basically make my mom just like depressed all the time. And I figured that's probably what would happen. And she's taking it a lot better than I thought. It actually ended up being a relatively positive experience after we kind of debated, and they were like, well, we don't have any more arguments for you. Okay, I guess you're an atheist now. I'll let you know if I can think of anything, but you've defeated all our points. So we'll still be friends. It's okay. That kind of thing.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that they didn't freak out on you or whatnot, because, you always hear these horror stories of other people who, their parents freak out on them when they find out. And so it's really good that you have very supportive, parents, even though they're still part of that church, right?
They're a part of the same type of church, basically. They might be a part of something that's just a little bit less conservative. They go to a different church now, and part of that is because they think the reason why I'm an atheist now is because some people in my church were so like cultish and so forceful, and so they basically think it's just like a phase where I'm rejecting Christianity, because I've only been an atheist for like a year and a half or so, and so they're still convinced it's a phase, and they don't really like my church because they think that it pushed me to that. So they're at another church that's another independent fundamental Baptist church. It's just not that one. But yeah, their beliefs are pretty much the same, I guess.
Okay. Well, I guess just playing devil's advocate here, do you think that there could be any argument that could cause you to question, your atheist worldview, and make you want to change back to being a Christian?
There's the Matt Dillahunty line where it's like, God knows the proof that I would require to convert and become a Christian. But I think that maybe Holy Kool-Aid at one point mentioned this, that and I'm pretty sure that it was him. I really enjoyed this point, whoever it was. But prayer studies would be, I would consider that some indirect evidence if they were properly controlled. And I feel like I'm knowledgeable enough about the scientific process to figure out whether or not proper controls were in place. But if I saw an overwhelming amount of prayer studies, like if there were tons of like systematic reviews and meta-analyses of just all these prayer studies that confirm this one specific deity, and I guess consequently, like, you pray to him in this certain way and it gets better results, that would be some evidence for me. It would make me really re-examine a lot of my metaphysical type views. My philosophies would have to change in a lot of ways, but I would be willing to do that if I saw some evidence there. But I don't think that my church specifically had too much of an influence on me just rejecting everything altogether, because I was out of that church for like 4 years, and had become much more kind of just non-denominational, but still had fundamentalist belief type weirdness. So I didn't really stake my identity in that church. And I don't really think that my rejection of Christianity had much to do with my rejection of the church, because I didn't see myself as involved with that church anymore anyway. So it actually never crossed my mind until my parents brought that up when I came out to them. Okay.
Yeah. I grew up but I grew up Catholic. And then, I went non-denominational and Baptist and all of that. And I can safely say that I'm in the same boat. Like, any one church didn't really have an effect on me becoming an atheist. For me, it was actually a no true Scotsman fallacy that a friend posed to me, saying that if you don't believe the Bible is literal truth, then you're not a real Christian. Like, I guess it's kind of similar to how you kind of thought about it after your astronomy class or whatnot. Like, it can't be metaphorical. It is either literal or it's not true, kind of thing. So I was kind of in the same boat as you. So
yeah, definitely. Interpretations had a lot to do with my. I thought a lot about interpretation during that kind of 4-month media blackout, and realizing, basically literature is meant to be interpreted, and it is always interpreted. It's completely impossible to get away from your personal interpretation if you read something. And so I realized that is just writing a book or inspiring people to write a book over thousands of years, even if there were complete, even if there was complete consistency, which there's not, then it wouldn't be an effective way of actually communicating your message. It'd be better to just make people be born with an inherent knowledge of how to have salvation. And so that's interpretation was a big part of me making my transition too.
Okay. Now, you said that you haven't really told very many people around you that you're an atheist. Have you told any of your closer friends that you're an atheist?
I think I haven't actually directly told really any of my closer friends. And that seems weird, but I went to college with all of my now close friends. I have literally one single friend from high school. And he went to the church with me, and he now thinks that the church was a little bit crazy, but he's still Christian. And, so no, I haven't really told any of my close friends, but when it comes to meeting new people or making new friends, I'm always open about it. And some of my closer friends that I've made since I've been an atheist, all know, and they're totally cool with it. But one day it's going to be inevitable, and I'll end up coming out to some of my close Christian friends, and I'm not totally sure what to expect from some of them. Some of them, they'll be like, whatever, that's fine. Some of them I'm not really sure, and that's kind of why I haven't taken that step. Right.
Yeah, I mean that unknowing of how they're going to react can be pretty daunting. I pretty much went full force with it. like I didn't just go out telling people, "Oh, hey, look, I'm an atheist now." But I didn't restrict myself whenever talking about things. Do you? I know that earlier you said that you really just don't think about bringing that kind of stuff up. Is that the same situation now as far as having religious debates or whatnot with them? Do you just not get into it, or?
Oh man, I am constantly biting my tongue all the time. Yeah, my wife knows how much, and it's probably an annoying amount that I think about that kind of thing when I'm hanging out with my Christian friends, and it's especially strange because when I go out to dinner, with my Christian friends, they all want to pray, and I just kind of go along with it. I don't know, some people in the atheist community might think that that's horrible. I should never do that and subject myself to it. For me personally, it's not that big of a deal until I've told them. If I tell them and they still expect me to do it, then they're douchebags, but I don't think any of them would be that way. But Yeah, I think about it all the time when I'm hanging out with Christian friends and they say, "Oh, God wanted this to happen," or I'm really struggling with this choice and I'm praying about it. And I think that I think I might accidentally give hints sometimes, because I talk about basing choices on evidence a lot to my friends, and some of them are probably like, "Oh, Drew's like become a lot more of a liberal Christian, and he thinks that we're almost in a kind of like deistic type world." But I haven't dropped any hints, I think, that were big enough to where anybody thinks, "Oh yeah, Drew's definitely an atheist," even though I really want to come out and say it. A lot of the time I haven't done that.
Okay. Well, and I mean, I can't really blame you for that, or blame you for, going along with it. I've never been the kind of person to really dictate how people should act. I feel like, they know their situation a lot better than I ever could. So that's why, like, I don't like it when people are like, "You shouldn't do that," or whatnot. 'Cause I mean, who am I to dictate your life, kind of deal,
Yeah.
But, looking back on the entire process, and would you say that you like, other than like your beliefs as far as a God existing, has anything else like really changed about you, as far as, between you being heavily religious to now being non-religious?
I mean, really the way that I guess I live my life and the actions that I take are not like super different, but the way that I think about things, process things, and kind of make decisions is pretty different in the way that I used to, like when I was like deciding my major in college, I did like maybe a couple days of research into, this is what this degree offers. This is what this degree offers. But mostly I would just pray about it, and whatever I felt like I thought was God's will. And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's what needs to happen. That's the major that I need to be." That's basically how I ended up choosing the major that I actually got, which is a counseling psychology degree. And while I do think I made the right decision for what I like and for what I wanted to do, I used to think that God's will would just kind of happen to me if I went with almost like my gut instinct. And now I'm extremely skeptical of my own feelings, and I really dig into a lot of data before I make any kind of decision. Like before, if I was going to move apartment buildings, I would be like, "Oh, if I really feel like that's going to be a good apartment building, then God just must want me to be there." And now I would be like looking up all the statistics I could possibly find that would help me make a decision, whether or not that was a good like financial decision, whether or not it was going to be close to the things that I liked, I guess how much space I would have, all that kind of stuff. It would come down a lot more. It's like a mathematical type decision. And so I make all my decisions based on evidence now. But I think from the outside looking in, it probably doesn't look too much different. But there are decisions that I have made since becoming an atheist that were made in a very, very different way from when I used to be a Christian.
Okay. Yeah. I can say, like, I never had that kind of decision making when I was a Christian, at least. Like, like I had various points in my life where I was like, well, this must be what God wants, or something like that. But I would say that I've become a lot more analytical as well, as far as, making decisions, instead of just, leaving it up to God or whatnot. But I'm kind of curious, what was, did you feel any different? Like when you admitted that you were an atheist, or figured out you were an atheist, did you like feel any different like afterwards? Like, for instance, for me, I felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders, because like I was carrying around a whole lot of guilt, because like I didn't go to church, I didn't pray to God regularly, I didn't do all these things that I was brought up to think that I should do. And once I, realized I was an atheist, that kind of lifted off my shoulders. So I'm kind of curious if you had any kind of similar reactions.
Yeah, actually I had that same thing happen in a way. I felt guilty about kind of thinking that Christians that got really emotional and into worship, I felt guilty about thinking that they were just getting caught up in hype and getting caught up in emotion. And also I didn't really like to do like daily devotions, even though most of my friends did. And at my school, they were like, oh, if you want to succeed academically, you have to do devotions every day or you're not going to pass your classes and that kind of thing. And then, the churches that I would go to would always say you had to do that too. And so, yeah, I had guilt lifted when I became an atheist. But I think that when I first said the word atheist, I really started paying attention. Like, my parents have always told me that people who don't live their lives according to the Bible are going to have really unfortunate existences, like not in just their afterlives, but in their earthly lives. And so I thought, all these bad things will probably start happening to me. All my luck is going to go away, basically, if I become an atheist. And so when I first used the word atheist, I was like, all right, I need to check that assumption. If bad things start happening to me all the time, maybe I need to check it out. I mean, I was really skeptical of that because I thought, if bad things start happening to me, that doesn't necessarily mean that I made the wrong decision, because correlation doesn't equal causation. But I paid attention to it a bit. I actually, in order to, I guess, prove that idea wrong, I made a list pretty early on. And I think I called it God of Coincidences. And for a while, I've gotten away from it now. It's not something I do regularly anymore. But I became an atheist. I started this journal called God of Coincidences, and I would document every time something happened that if I was a Christian, I would think, wow, God really blessed me with that. Like, I made a friend at work that was this, they were into this specific thing that I was interested in. And I was like, man, I've really been wanting to get into this, and I need someone else to also kind of be into this to help me figure out like what this is all about and improve my skills in it. And I met that kind of person, and I was an atheist, and I was like, if I was a Christian, I totally would have thought God brought this person into my life. And, and finding a new job at one point after I became an atheist, my second job paid more than my first job out of college. And I would have thought, wow, God brought this right to me and made it to where, I had the best opportunity possible. And yeah, so I guess that's the way that things changed for me when I became an atheist. I kind of stopped seeing coincidences as part of the universe's like innate plan or God's innate plan. Things lifted off my shoulders, and then things also changed in the way that I kind of looked at them as well.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking that I've actually had two instances in my life where people have come up to me and they were like, I believe God put you in my life so I can witness to you. And I'm just sitting there like, no, he didn't.
I actually had one person at my very first job. It was a homeless shelter, and I went back to go visit it at one point after I had moved away from that area. And I was an atheist at that point. I was talking to someone, and this little kid walked up, and we have this little exchange. And I work with kids, so I feel like I'm decent with them. And, we ended up playing a game and everything all in front of this one person. When the kid goes away, the person is like, I really think that God put you here today to bless this child, because they have like all this trauma and stuff, and like they have so much trouble reaching out to new people, and they like really needed a person that could just play with them and not be threatening to them and all this kind of stuff. And then they went on to tell me that I would be just like the best youth pastor ever. And they totally believed that God was like literally talking through them right now to tell me what my destiny was. And I was like, okay, well, I guess the universe accidentally conjured a blessing here. And so I just kind of nodded along and smiled. And like my wife was off to the side, and she just observed this whole thing and not interacting with it. And she was just like sitting there like, then we walked out the door, and she's like, oh my God, that was unbearable. So.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of that. It's what is it, like 855 for truth? There's a hotline. Yeah, there's a hotline you can call and you can have people witness to you. And I remember I spent about an hour or so on the phone with one of these guys, and I was throwing scripture at him after scripture, and he was like, you live in Alabama, you would have made a really good preacher. But no, yeah, I think that I think that it's awesome that you do that kind of work though with kids and the degree that you got. I think that's pretty awesome degree. And I didn't comment on your video about the Camp Quest, but I did want to tell you that I think that that's awesome that you're volunteering there.
I appreciate it.
I didn't realize that you had such a background in it, but it makes sense now that you've kind of explained it. But I'm kind of curious. Is there any like one piece of advice that you could give like an upcoming like a person that's doubting, or maybe even a new atheist? Like if there's one bit of advice that you could give them, what would that be?
I guess, I could give a piece of evidence or a piece of advice about, this is how you should consider evidence, and this is what makes good evidence, and this is what disqualifies evidence. But I guess really probably the best advice I could give to someone who's starting to question is don't dwell on any kind of self-deprecating thoughts. If the evidence suggests that you are on your own, that your religion is not true, that you maybe should go against your religion or something, that's not your fault. Your doubts are not your fault. You should never have guilt for doubting. That's something that I was basically indoctrinated with, and there was some, but not as much self-deprecation, I think, than maybe someone else coming out of faith from my church would have had. And that was a good thing, and that helped me consider things, I think, more objectively. But yeah, don't get down on yourself for just trying to figure out what's true. It's totally okay. And if you end up finding something that you think makes your religion more credible, that's okay. You shouldn't feel guilty either way. I don't necessarily agree that there's any evidence out there that makes any one religion more credible than just a position of like agnostic atheism. But I don't think that you should get down on yourself either way. If you start coming out of your religion and thinking, I'm on my own, like I am being more reasonable than the people who taught me all this stuff. I made a video about, is atheism prideful? And that's the one that like really shot up in views. And that's because a lot of people who are coming out of faith, I think, have trouble because they think, well, if I become an atheist, I'm basically saying I am my own God. And no, that's not true. You're just a regular human being who's trying to find truth the best they can. So don't get down on yourself for just doing that. It's totally normal, totally natural.
Yeah, that's an awesome bit of advice. I know that plenty of atheists kind of go through this whole journey alone. And I think, you're very lucky to have somebody there with you that was kind of going through with you at the same time. So I'm sure that helped.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Drew, I really appreciate you joining me today for this interview. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that maybe sometime you can come back onto the channel, maybe for like a collab video or something.
Oh, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Great. Well, everybody right now, drop what you're doing. Go subscribe to Drew over on the Genetically Modified Skeptic and go do that right now. Not as if any kind of bump from me could really rival Hemet Meta, but, in case you haven't subscribed to him, go and do that now. He definitely does need more subscribers because your content is very good. So anybody subscribing is not going to be let down whatsoever. So definitely go and do that right now.
I appreciate it. I've only been around for, it's going to be like 3 months in just like a few days, I guess. And so I'm like overwhelmed with the amount of good responses that I've gotten, and also the amount of people who've been trying to convert me. So that's pretty great. But, but yeah, I really appreciate the plug there. I mean, I think that it definitely will help out my channel. So I really appreciate that. I enjoy your content. I'm glad that you enjoy mine.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I've been trying to comment a lot more on videos because, you know, I'm used to commenting like on Facebook, cause that's where I'm quote unquote big at. So I've been trying to do a bit more commenting on videos. So I'm gonna try to, you'll start seeing me in the comments is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. But anyways, Drew, it was really nice to meet you today. And, I guess I'll be seeing you later.
All right. Awesome. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching Genetically Modified Skeptic here. If you will, his links are down below. Go give him a subscribe. Let him know I sent you, and I will see you heathens later. Bye, guys.